All right, we'll get this going. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Hawaii Aquaculture Collaborative Brown Bag Seminar. We're joined today by Associate Professor of Aquaculture, Dr. Chad Callan. He's going to talk about a new initiative called the NOAA CIFARM initiative that he's co-PI on, and how it relates to Hawaii and a lot more stuff. So I'll just let you take it away, Chad. Thanks for joining us.
Sure. Let me just share my screen. Make sure everyone can see that. Is that good? Okay, great. Yeah, so thank you everyone for coming and listening to this presentation about Sea Farm. As Kai said, I'm Chad Callan. I'm a associate professor of aquaculture here at UH Hilo, co-PI on the UH portion of this project, along with co-PIs Maria Hawes, Eric Franklin, and Darren Lerner. Um, I wanted to point out that this is just the Hawaii portion of the NOAA Cooperative Institute for Aquaculture. We're calling it Sea Farm PI. And as you'll see in the presentation, there are 4 other regional sea farms that make up the Cooperative Institute nationally, each one focusing on regionally specific topics and species, but in a coordinated fashion across the US. Oops. So for most of you, I probably don't have to show this slide, but there may be someone that isn't familiar with aquaculture and why we'd want to do it here in Hawaii. But so if you don't know, most of the seafood we eat comes from somewhere else. This is both nationally and specifically here in Hawaii. So if we can grow more of it here, it means more local food, local jobs, and a shorter trip from the water to the plate. Our region is genuinely well suited to it. We have warm water year round. We have deep water close to shore. We have a community interest in growing food here. And so we have some unique geographical assets that other areas don't. Also, we're not starting from scratch. We already have the only permitted commercial farm in the US. We have our long-standing network of fish ponds growing food for the communities, and we also have decades of hatchery research in different universities and organizations out here in Hawaii. Basically, if I had to sum up the goal of what Sea Farm is, it's to grow more of our own food and to build the people and know how to keep doing it. Um, Unofficially, the Office of Aquaculture has said that their goal is to see more fins in the water and making shellfish economically viable. So if we had to distill it down to those 2 main goals, that's what they would like to see come out of this initiative. So probably the biggest thing I'd like to discuss today is kind of what is a cooperative institute, because there are some misconceptions as to what these things are and what they're not. Basically, the short version is that NOAA is putting long-term funding and its own scientists into aquaculture in partnership with universities. So it's a 5-year program that is renewable to 10 years. It is the goal with that is that it's long enough to be actually finish something. This could be a breeding program, a permitting pathway, a train of cohorts, graduate students, et cetera. These things all usually take longer than a typical grant. The biggest difference with the Cooperative Institute is that NOAA scientists are actually working alongside the researchers. It's not just NOAA funding our work or reviewing our work. They're actually taking part in it. They're actually they're designing the projects, and they're helping carry them out. So that's probably the biggest difference between a cooperative institute and a regular grant, is that the funding agency is actually working with the scientists and with the staff. Another difference is that the work can be added and it can change as different needs emerge. So once this CI exists, new projects can get added And as priorities change or as new things are learned, the focus can shift. And so this allows it to be more flexible and allows it to work a little bit more quickly because you're not working for like the next year's round of funding cycles, which then take another year to implement. So the main point is continuity and that the fact that very little aquaculture actually gets solved in 2 years. This is a long-term kind of investment. Um, so the longer version of what a cooperative institute is, and this comes directly from the NOAA Cooperative Institute Handbook, if anyone's really interested in digging into this, is that it's a long-term mission partnership, not a standalone grant. So it's basically partnering research capacity of different universities and education with facilities and NOAA science centers. This basically allows for mission alignment. The research is directly then related to NOAA's fisheries long-term mission needs and strategic priorities. It's done through a partnership structure where there's this cooperative agreement between the NOAA science centers and the institute or consortium of institutes. Generally, there's a consortium capacity, and that's the same with ours. Typically, it involves multiple institutions and coordinates resources across non-government partners. So, again, this is in contrast to a regular grant that's usually awarded to maybe one institution with some partners. This could be many institutions with many partners. There is a strong focus on education and workforce. It supports graduate students, postdoctoral scientists, professionals, training, and also NOAA personnel. It's an adaptive mechanism. It basically gives NOAA a flexible pathway for emerging needs and evolving research priorities. So it basically, once it's set up, it's a focal point for NOAA to be able to put resources into that can flexibly address its priorities and needs. And the benefit is that it's shared resources, that NOAA basically gains external capability and reach that it wouldn't otherwise be able to achieve. And the partner institutions expand their research capacity and their facilities, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a mutual benefit. So if this isn't a straight grant, what is CIFARM? And this slide actually was designed by a colleague of mine, Mike Rust, to kind of put it in perspective that a lot of people can get a better handle on. Think of it as this idea of NOAA choosing a cuisine, like a style of food. We propose a menu in that style, and then they choose the meal of what they actually want to consume. So in this case, NOAA gave us the cuisine, which was basically aquaculture, right? And the NOFO basically called for a menu that would consider aquaculture demonstration projects, aquaculture engineering and technology, environmental observations, modeling, forecasting, risk management, vulnerability assessments, seafood market analysis, education, outreach, and engagement. Pretty much everything you could possibly think of that could fall into the aquaculture needs. We then and others responded to this NOFO by putting together what's called a T1 proposal. So many groups across the country put together basically their menu of what they felt they could do to address the needs that NOAA asked for. The idea was that this proposal would show flexibility for multidisciplinary aquaculture and coordination of research activities with NOAA, be able to pursue high performance research, supporting NOAA's missions, goals, and strategic plan, and then execute these partnerships with maximum impact. So we put together this proposal, others put together their proposals, and then recently, over the past few months, it was announced that UNH was actually selected as the winner of this cooperative institute, and we, by association, are now involved because we're one of the 4 other regional partners with UNH. So what we just did and are in the process of waiting to receive our feedback on is put together kind of the meal. Our project framework that we proposed as part of this initial process of getting started. Um, uh, so we put in what's called a T3 proposal. And as I'll mention in a little bit, this is an ongoing process. It's not a one-time thing. So we put in our first T3 proposal, which is basically explaining how we're going to set up our CIFARM structure, how we're going to execute activities, and what we envision the next few years to look like. I did want to point out, just to make it even more complicated, that there are actually two different types of T3 projects. There's Task 2 and Task 3. Most of the projects that we're going to propose in CIFARM are considered Task 2, which basically means there's direct collaboration with NOAA scientists and substantial NOAA involvement. That's what NOAA really envisions this Cooperative Institute platform to consist primarily of. However, we can also propose what are called Task 3 proposals, which have minimal research involvement by NOAA staff. These are the more traditional grants that we're probably mostly familiar with, where we receive money to do something, doesn't necessarily involve federal staff participation, and then we report results back. So those types of projects are also possible in this CIFARM framework. And again, the NOFO called for the U.S. aquaculture to basically address this seafood import deficit through this long-term research and education partnership between NOAA and other universities. So that's the mandate. And step one proposed the people, the expertise, and the possible projects. And step three is the series of proposals that actually fund the projects. And the overall goal is for CIFARM to create regional capacity, usable regional capacity, not just a bunch of isolated research projects. So again, this is a little bit different from traditional grant competitions where people kind of have their lanes that they stay in and they do their projects. This is really to create capacity within the region and amongst the whole nation, actually. So the funding is also kind of a misconception. A lot of people saw the $300 million NOFO and thought this was a $300 million grant. It's not exactly how it works. So again, this is a 5-year program which can be renewed for an additional 5 years. And most CIs that I'm familiar with have been renewed for at least those 2 periods. Some have gone on much, much longer. The way it's funded, at least initially, is with congressional appropriations. And so right now, there's $5 million a year allocated to CIFARM as a whole. So again, remember, this is a national program between 5 partners, and right now there's only $5 million per year to split up. So this original funding of $13.5 million that everyone's reading about was the result of 2.5 or 2 years plus the next year's funding cycle backing up on each other, because these appropriations actually started a few years ago. This idea of the Cooperative Institute actually has been sitting in the NOAA Office of Aquaculture since 2024, and the NOFO didn't come out until 2025, and then the funding didn't actually start getting released until 2026. So there's basically 3 years of backed up funding, which is why and how there was this $13.5 million available in the first year. The reason it's not $15 million is because NOAA also takes 10% off the top of each allocation. So the $5 million really is $4.5 million after their 10% deduction. So there's not a lot of money specifically allocated to this program yet, but we did receive as a national consortium the allotment of that first $13.5 million that we're splitting up between the regions. And the $300 million is the ceiling that basically can go into this program over the first 5 years. So that allows for growth. And it's expected that there will be growth because we're hoping that there will be additional appropriations from Congress. However, that may be contentious in the coming fiscal year. But the more likely places for growth is funding from other agencies that actually can funnel money into and transfer money into CIFARM because they don't want to lose the money in the next fiscal cycle. So they move it around, and that's a common way of funding these cooperative institutes is that different offices actually can fund different activities through this mechanism. The money can be used for general or specific purposes. So it can be delivered or directed broadly, like aquaculture in general, or it can be pretty narrow, like work on a particular species. And importantly, the projects are not pre-programmed. So we have an ongoing rolling basis that we can submit proposals depending on available funding and current priorities. So we're not limited to like a once a year call or necessarily a specific funding amount or ceiling. There's a lot of flexibility here, and different regions may be submitting proposals at different time periods. However, all the proposals are going to go through UNH, which is the main lead institution. Just to kind of keep that in mind. So what we have is one national network, but we have 5 regional CIFARMs, if you will. This consortium is made up of the University of New Hampshire, which is the lead agency with New Hampshire Sea Grant, University of Miami with Florida Sea Grant. They're calling themselves CIFARM SEC or Southeastern Caribbean because they're also going to include Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. We have the CIFARM Gulf, which is the University of Southern Mississippi and Mississippi Alabama Sea Grant. We have CIFARM West, which is Hub SeaWorld Research Institute and California Sea Grant. They are going to basically represent the entire west coast of the U.S. and including Alaska. And then we have CIFARM PI, which is University of Hawaii and Hawaii Sea Grant. You'll notice that Sea Grant is represented in all of the regions, and that was intentional. We're planning to work closely with Sea Grant on outreach and engagement, and among other projects. And the reason that we decided that it needed to be regional was because what works up in New Hampshire isn't necessarily what works out here in Hawaii. And so although we all have very similar goals, and the US as a whole has this mandate to increase aquaculture production, how we do it in the different regions may be different. And that's why we carve things up in this manner. So across all the regions, we do have this kind of generalized group of proposals that fall primarily into 3 main buckets, if you will. And there's sub-activities within each of these that I can go into more detail later if people have questions. But broadly, we're looking at supporting the infrastructure and management of each regional CIFARM, basically getting this whole thing started, forming working groups, forming advisory committees, forming boards that will help to shape and define the regional priorities, as well as conduct regional workshops to do the above. We're planning to identify test beds where actual in the water testing can be done, and we're going to get started quickly with our workforce and education efforts. So that's kind of the first group of broad projects. The second grouping is what we call science advice or science advice product development. This is an area that basically will service all the regions because all the regions have similar challenges when it comes to things like permitting, when it comes to things like environmental assessments, when it comes to things like marketing and economics and engineering challenges. And so what we envision is creating tools that help expedite and achieve some of the goals in those categories. And those are things that NOAA is particularly interested in because those are things that carry forward, long after CIFARM may cease. And then the third group is production technology or projects that are aimed at improving fish production, shellfish production, seaweed production, etc. The more traditional areas of research that we're probably mostly familiar with. So I'm going to go into each one of these in a little bit more detail before we conclude. So the first one, infrastructure and education. This is really the management backbone of each regional sea farm. This is identifying test beds. It's starting the workforce pipeline. So what we envision here is creating the management structure and the strategic planning activities that need to occur. This includes regional workshops, needs assessments, advisory input, defining what performance metrics we want to look at, and we want to coordinate this across the sea farm region so that there's some consistency across the regions in this regard. We also want to identify or establish test beds for innovation. So these are things where things can be tested, where we can look at candidate species, gear, training, production, like actually in water activities. And again, start the workforce and education right off the bat in order to train students, technicians, producers, agency staff. So what's envisioned to come out of this kind of first bucket of activities is assessing and defining the needs of the region, developing regional and topical work plans, identifying our demonstration capacity and starting to actually act on it, and then have a more trained workforce. So this concept of infrastructure, it's not just the facilities, it's actually the whole portfolio. It's the people and the places that turn the stakeholder priorities into usable outputs. So first and foremost in here is training the people who are going to do the work. Somebody said that none of this matters if nobody can run it here in 10 years after the sea farm is over. So we want to make sure there is a workforce that's here long after sea farm is not. We envision this to be a graduate and postdoctoral team across UH system, working on things like breeding, engineering, environmental monitoring, economics, community engagement. So it's not just the in-water stuff, it's social science, it's business, it's engineering that are all required here. Getting hands-on training at working sites, so increasing opportunities for internships at hatcheries, at fish ponds, at offshore operations, not just in the classroom. We'd like to try to develop a shared aquaculture program across UH, bringing students in from different backgrounds. Again, this is envisioned to be multidisciplinary, not just aquaculture, but business, engineering, societal, all those things. We are eventually going to incorporate the wider Pacific. So students from Guam, CNMI, American Samoa, freely associated states. We envision bringing them in for training opportunities and expanding out to those areas. And also capitalizing on our indigenous stewardship programs that already exist, engaging Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander students, using those traditional resources and stewardship mechanisms that they already are so far along with, as well as the contemporary aquaculture. So the next area is science advice. So this is turning information basically into governance and industry decisions. We envision capitalizing on the fact that there are already lots and lots of data sets available, and there's emerging AI tools that can help organize this. And we envision creating an actual dedicated AI agent specifically for aquaculture and specifically for assisting aquaculture processes that are typically very laborious and time consuming, such as the permitting and environmental assessments. We also think that these could be used for the marketing and economic assessments that need to be done. NOAA really wants to evaluate candidate species that they view as becoming somewhat commodity type species. They want to evaluate them for price and supply chain and feasibility and investment logic, all that type of stuff. And so these are the types of studies that AI can really help with, as well as engineering and permitting, providing science support for siting, environmental review, and that type of thing. Importantly, we can't leave humans out. So all of these products, we envision there being humans signing off on this before it goes anywhere. The artificial AI intelligent agent or aquaculture agent drafts and summarizes, the people decide. And we wanted to point out that these science advice products can be regional or national. We envision this category 2 is spanning all the different regions. And so each region is going to contribute where we have strengths into one central place to model and create economic summaries, standards, recommendations, and decision support tools. So this kind of chart was developed to kind of show how this might work. Typically, we have all of this previous science advice docs and performance data. We have peer review literature, and a human would have to sort through all of this in order to create a draft permit application or NEPA analysis or environmental assessment. If we incorporate some new tools that are available and actually develop a specific GPT model to work with this documentation and these processes specifically, we feel that they can expedite the process of drafting these documents, which a human could then review, and then the final document could be created. So it really would speed up the time lag that's leading up in the human review and summary of all of this prior information. That's really what AI is well suited to do. However, we do need to continue to have actual people engage in this. And then the last thing is basically the places to try things out. So we need to, after we've identified test beds, we need to be able to coordinate actual research and demonstration activities where it matters. What pictured here is something called the Aquafort. This is a floating fish cage developed by the University of New Hampshire. They have one of these off the coast of New Hampshire that produces about 20,000 pounds per year of steelhead trout. It's not very big. It's 30 feet across and 50 feet long. So it doesn't take up a lot of space. It's a great place for demonstrating aquaculture at a community scale, at a scale that students can get engaged in, at a scale that legislators can easily observe, and decision makers can easily follow what's going on. So we envision not necessarily one of these in every region, but something like it, something that can be demonstrated at community scale, where new species, a piece of gear, a new method can be tried before anyone wants to go all in on it. We have identified a few places already across the state. In Hilo, there's what we're calling the Hilo Aquaculture Pilot Site. This is a 9-acre zone that's been recently approved for limu and shellfish production. And the whole permitting pathway that led to that is really going to be the main deliverable, but we are actually planning to deploy some structures to culture limu and shellfish there. We also obviously have NOAA, established infrastructure, surface and deep water access, commercial operators already there. So that's an ideal, obvious place to have testbed activities going on. In the Western Pacific, UNH and Oceanic Institute is engaged in a separate project apart from CIFARM to deploy one of these aquaforts in Saipan. They're actually in the process now of permitting the site. They've identified where they want to put it, and they're hopefully going to have the permits by the end of this year, and the structure deployed in the early part of 2027. So this would be a great community scale platform for training workforce in the Western Pacific. And then we also obviously have a lot of other partner sites on land and also fish pond sites. So these are other places where community scale efforts can be tested and show working progress. So the goal is to use those things to get answers that people could use. Does it pencil out? Can we develop cost of production, market analyses, species by species, extending to the species that we have here, like moi and limu and oysters? we want to show if permits are possible. Can we documenting the actual steps with the agencies, how this actually works, which reviews, which leases, basically create a pathway that will help future people get permits faster. And we also want to test the engineering. Is it going to hold up? Is it going to work in our region? And this is going to be the case across all the different regions. So these are the questions that decide usually whether something gets built. And generally, they're not anyone's funded job. Typically, this all has to be absorbed by industry. And we're hoping that CIFARM efforts can help absorb some of this initial question and information gathering so that the industry can benefit from that. So what this basically means for you, it depends on where you sit. If you're a farm or you want to farm, hopefully we're envisioning that you have access to these testbed sites, methods, real cost and market numbers, and you get help working through the permits. If you're a student, we're hoping it creates opportunities, internships, graduate research opportunities, career pathways. If you're a community group, you can be involved to set the priorities. Supporting these community scale projects at first, and then working on towards larger operations. If you're in the seafood business, it'll help figure out which species may or may not make sense, give you some supply chain and product quality information that maybe you wouldn't otherwise have had access to. If you work for an agency, we're hoping this will provide better data, clearer permitting tools, better risk frameworks and engineering standards that may not exist at the moment. And if you're a researcher, shared data sets, field sites, working groups, and direct engagement with NOAA scientists. So there's kind of a place for everybody here, depending on where you sit in the paradigm. The common thread here is access to the information. So generally, a single farm or a single agency or a single family trying to do this on their own wouldn't be able to provide all of this or have access to all of this. So the idea here is that this provides a common place to access that information. So our thinking in the first year is that it's mostly going to be about listening and setting up. We don't envision a lot of immediate in-water action occurring. First and foremost, we plan to do these workshops and get advisory input. So we're going to be doing this through a series of workshops and community listening sessions over the coming years or coming year, and we'll announce those well ahead for people to be able to participate in. We're planning to organize. We're going to be creating working groups, develop shared milestones, priorities. I'll probably be reaching out to a number of folks to see if they're engaged their interest in participating in those working groups. And then hopefully start building data sets, identifying test beds, and starting to train our workforce. If we get through that far, then we hopefully will start to be able to advise, demonstrate, and transfer. But really in the first year, we think it's going to be these first three, with these coming in subsequent years. And our goal is not just Hawaii, it's the Pacific Islands. So this includes CNMI, Guam, American Samoa, as well as the freely associated states, so Marshall Islands, FSM, and Palau. So we are planning to engage folks in all of the Pacific Island region. So the ways you can get involved are, first of all, coming to a workshop. So we're with Sea Grant, we're planning to host workshops across 7 different Pacific Island sites. So we haven't even been awarded the money yet. So we haven't started even planning these yet. But we will be doing that over what we're going to call year one, whenever year one actually starts. We want to look for students and trainees. Once we actually have these assistantships and opportunities for grad students, we're going to provide internships and graduate research opportunities, both at UH, places like PACRAC, but also partner sites. If you're a producer or a business, hopefully we can get you access to some of these testbed facilities. You may even host as a testbed facility if you're interested in doing that, and develop production data, market data, and working through permanent processes. And then community organizations like fish pond practitioners or community scale farmers can basically help share their voice as to what they see the needs are at the community scale. So you can get in touch by contacting me or any of my PIs. I put my email and my phone number here. I think I have it on the last slide as well. I can leave that up for a little bit at the end. I did also want to call your attention to the fact that NOAA, coincidentally, is seeking input on aquaculture opportunity areas. The Pacific region is listed as option E. So there are 5 different regions they're considering as the next aquaculture opportunity area. I would encourage you to join in on one of these listening sessions if you can. The first one is this Thursday. So that's tomorrow between 3 and 4 p.m. There's another one next week between 12 and 1 p.m. And then there's one at the end of the month, early in the morning, 9 to 10 a.m. During those listening sessions, you can actually speak your opinion, but they are also seeking written opinions through their website, and you can learn more about that online. So with that, I will end, and I can take questions if you guys want, and I can stop sharing. If you guys all have my email, I'll stop sharing. All right,
That was
here we go.
great. That was great, Chad. Um, yeah, that cleared up a lot of questions I had for your farm. If I could ask a question real quick before
Sure.
we open it up. Um, I know it's a ways off, but
Mhm.
once you've established these tier 3 priorities and you release, I guess I assume like some kind of RFP for funding, who ultimately kind of decides, the quality of the projects and who gets, the funding?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good question, and I don't know that I have the authoritative answer on that. I mean, ultimately, um, what I envision is having some type of working group, some type of advisory board at a regional capacity that helps steer what projects or ideas we want to um, funnel into the larger, national pool. Because remember, basically, um, there's a certain amount of money that's going to be allocated each year that's available. That depending on what NOAA thinks the regional needs are, they may choose to not divide that equally, right? Like right now, we have kind of an equal split amongst the 5 partners, but going forward, that might not always be the case. And so the more ideas we have, the more priorities we can show, the stronger our stance will be as far as securing a bigger portion of whatever that annual uh, um, pot is. At the end of the day, it's NOAA that's going to decide what gets funded. So I think that we can put in as many potential projects as we want, but it does take quite a bit of work to do that, and then NOAA will basically make their decision. I think there's going to be some funneling and vetting done by both at the regional level and then again at the kind of UNH level before it gets submitted to NOAA. But I would say that the more ideas and needs we can demonstrate with like real world possibility as far as advancing aquaculture, um, and aquaculture actual production, I think that makes a stronger case.
Got it. Thank you. Looks like Anthony has a question.
Thanks, Kai. Thanks, Chad. Awesome presentation, and it's super exciting. I had some thoughts when you just said that bringing in more projects the merrier. I actually will question that. Not so much like I don't think you meant it exactly that way, but is this program really looking for diversity, or is this program looking for the next big thing?
Yeah.
Is it, are they looking for the next breakthrough species or the next breakthrough system for the Pacific? Or, are they looking to feed and make that the focus, or are they looking to make technology advancement that can be exported globally, um, or advance nationally? Is that the focus? So I just have questions
Yeah,
about that and where our heads
no,
are at.
that's a good point. No, I hear what you're saying. Diversity is not what they're looking for. I mean, per se, they're looking to increase domestic production of seafood, like full stop. Like that's, I mean, they're investing in this kind of potentially 10-year partnership to hopefully move the needle and actually show that US seafood production has gone up in that 10-year time and that imports have come down. Whether that's realistic, I don't know. But that's the goal. So they're more likely to fund projects that have a tangible demonstration of moving the needle versus some new product that is unproven or untested or what have you.
Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah.
Fins in the water. Yeah.
Fins in the water and shellfish economically viable.
Awesome. Are there other questions for Chad? Neil.
Yeah, Chad. Actually, this is a question for Kai. Thank you very much, Chad, for clearing up many of the questions that had been
Sure,
fluttering around in my head since I'd first heard about this. Congratulations to you all.
sure. Yeah,
This
yeah.
is
Well,
great.
it's really all of us. It's not. I mean, this is for the region. It's
Yeah, yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah, and I'd like to be able to share this recording with the rest of my team. So, Kai, could you please forward the recording of this around to
Yes,
us all afterwards?
absolutely.
And thanks very much, Chad. Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll give this some thought and get back here, start throwing some ideas at you.
awesome.
Excellent. Thanks all.
Other questions for Chad?
I'll ask another question because we have a quiet crowd here. Um, there's a lot of folks on this call that are playing big roles in aquaculture, but there are also people on this call, and especially moving forward, there's going to be a lot of folks in the general audience in Hawaii that are going to question like, oh, how does this benefit us? Like, I'm
Mhm.
a small producer. I'm growing limu in our fish pond. I'm going to grow fish. I'm doing aquaponics in my backyard. Like, where can this go? Um, what would be the message to those folks about this project? And how can they get involved? How can we get the community involved in this type of project, even though it kind of is lending towards more of like the big players, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an opportunity for community scale to be involved. I mean, that's really what's happening. That's what's getting this off the ground in New Hampshire. I mean, to be honest, I mean they're demonstrating fish production at a 20,000 pound per year, 20,000 pound per year scale. Which isn't going to feed the world, but it's showing that aquaculture can be viable. It's demonstrating the methods and the challenge. It's demonstrating the challenges too. What still needs to be solved. So I think the access to information is where people at that level um, will gain. They'll gain um, real world data that show, does this pencil out? Should I even pursue this? Should I even scale this up more than I'm growing right now? Um, it might provide marketing opportunity information that they wouldn't have otherwise had access to. Create new ideas as far as how they're going to market their product or ways in which they could market their product, because the marketing and economic side of this is big. I mean, it's one of the core three things, right? And so trying to understand the marketing for aquaculture products and increasing public acceptance of aquaculture products um, is going to benefit everyone that produces, even at a smaller scale. If aquaculture products can be more widely accepted and not disfavored, then
Yeah.
people that grow even smaller scale things will have an increased opportunity.
That I have it at a magazine in front of me, and I never read aquaculture magazines. I know nobody who are in these magazines
Mhm.
oftentimes when I look at
Yeah.
them. Um, but I have Aquaculture North America in front of me, and there's an article on the main farming of oysters and how that's
Mhm.
been wildly successful, and it's increased their overall contributions to economy by like threefold for the industry and um doubled the revenues overall for I think it's for food production or something like that. But in any case, the article is like an open discussion on kind of the hopes and disappointments and lessons learned from these small producers that make that shellfish industry what it is. And
Mhm.
it's so celebrated. There's a main oyster trail, right? It is so interesting because I think it rivals it or it mirrors what I've gone through with my own business in aquaponics and microgreens. But it's basically like there's a certain scale that they're saying they need to get to. And while we're saying, there's great products out there, we're feeding some people and it's created this positivity in the region. Um, they're all saying the same thing, which is like they're picking up second jobs. They're
Mhm.
continuing to work in marine biology and fisheries as their day job and then doing this as a part-time thing. And there's good information to glean. Like there's a lot of producers there that seemingly are really close, right? They know what they need to get to, but like they're saying in these examples, like we're not willing to invest to get to that scale yet because there's so many things that need to happen to get there. Um, so the question to this group and especially with this project and the funding that we have would be to ask ourselves like what needs to change in the system if you have
Mhm.
a success story like all these small oyster farmers and in Hawaii maybe it's a lot of small limu farmers or whatever that makes a conglomerate and makes a story a headliner. What is it going to take to actually make it sustainable? Because it sounds like this oyster farming situation is not sustainable, even though there's all these like check boxes that are
Mhm.
sustainable about it. Financially, it's not quite there yet. So, is that a government thing? Does the government need to subsidize at this point? Do we want to expose that, or is like the larger goal of this project in terms of economics to expose that? I'm just curious because we go round and round and yeah, we have a couple companies here that are doing okay to keep boots on the ground and keep producing food for the community, but um you talk to individuals about it, it's like nobody knows a business model that'll work yet.
Mhm.
So I'd
Yeah.
be curious what other people think about that.
Yeah, for sure. Me too.
Um, I think we have a question from Tony.
Yeah, thanks, Chad, and thanks for the presentation, and kudos to you and UH and Sea Grant for being able to pull this off. My question comes on governance of this whole
Mhm.
project. Chad, you mentioned, sort of one from column A, one from column B. We can have a lot of different columns in there, a lot of different choices. So I'm wondering, how do you guys plan to organize this? You've got University of New Hampshire as the lead organization. Is there going to be proposals coming from the region, from you regional guys, and you guys sit down and decide on what you're going to present towards NOAA, or is it a cooperative aspect with NOAA and all that? It can get pretty engaged.
Yeah, yeah.
Curious
Yeah,
about the way
yeah,
that they're. Thank you. Okay.
the actual governance is fairly straightforward as far as the management of the CI. That's all going to be according to the CI handbook. So University of New Hampshire has to have a correct number of advisors and advisory board and council of fellows and all the standard type of things. So they're ultimately the final say with NOAA on the submittal of um, projects and proposals that go forward to NOAA. NOAA is the final decision maker on funding. But each region it's envisioned that each region is going to have its own board of advisors to some degree to help structure the regional priorities so that it's not a crazy disparate number of proposals going into UNH. And so we envision there being some type of advisory system with, industry representation, state representation, community representation, that can help guide at least what we feel our regional priorities should be and where what proposals should address from our region. And then UNH will then collect all of those from the different regions and basically decide how they all get pushed into NOAA. I don't know if that really answers your question. It's also a work in progress to actually see how this is going to unfold, because without knowing what our budget is for the year, it's hard to know kind of what to solicit and what to request as far as regional proposal limits, and what's actually what expectation we should have as far as what would be supported.
Yeah, we want to make sure we get our fair share and our fair, contribution.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping we can.
One group take over is kind of.
Well, and that's the thing is, and that is a concern that each region has had, is that, if aquaculture just explodes in the Gulf, right?
Mm-hmm.
And NOAA sees that as a real opportunity, they may say we want to funnel more effort and dollars to that area, or vice versa. It explodes in the Pacific, it could be the same thing. So we don't have a clear sense yet as to how that's all going to play out. Danielle Blacklock has indicated that if she had her way, she really would like to see this move forward at a national scale, and that each region is represented to some degree at all times.
Great. I think we have time for one more question. Margaret, you want to go ahead?
Great, thank you. Thanks for this presentation. This is the second one of these that I've had the opportunity to listen to. And I'm concerned about the listening sessions because I'm not sure how widely those are being advertised. And if there's one tomorrow, that's not a lot of notice. But given that there is a listening session, and this hopefully is the first of a few, what kinds of information can stakeholders like us on this call, whether it's finfish or aquaponics or shellfish, what kind of information is helpful for us to share during these listening sessions that would be meaningful to those of you who are trying to work within your budget and come up with a game plan, pathway, those kinds of things?
So maybe I don't know if I maybe confused folks, but the listening session that's happening tomorrow is not related to CIFARM. It's NOAA trying to identify its next aquaculture opportunity area. And so they're considering one of 5 areas around the country, and they want stakeholder engagement as to, why certain areas should be chosen, why certain areas should be excluded, what stakeholder groups think of aquaculture occurring in those areas, those type of things. So it's related to CIFARM in that if aquaculture opportunity areas are created, it makes it somewhat easier for industry to move forward because there's pre-identified areas that make it faster. You can choose a certain area that's already been vetted to some degree, but it's not necessarily, it's not really reducing all of the work that still goes into the permitting and all of that.
Yeah, sorry, it was definitely a misunderstanding on my part. But there will be listening sessions for CIFARM?
Yes, there will, and there's going to be a CIFARM website. There's going to be a lot of coordination with Sea Grants in the different regions, and so really Sea Grant is going to be one of the main mechanisms for getting the word out for CIFARM. But we'll have a number of places where things get posted. Eventually, we'll probably have email communications to broad groups and that type of thing. I'm going to work with folks here in our region to develop a network that can really get information out, hopefully effectively.
Okay, thank you for that. Then
Yeah.
I apologize again, but thank you for
No,
your
that's
work
okay.
today.
Thank you.
Well, right on. Thank you so much, Chad. I think we're gonna let everybody go have some lunch.
Okay.
Really appreciate your time. That was a great talk.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
And thanks everybody.
Thank you,
I
Kai.
put Chad's contact in the chat if anybody wants to contact.
Okay.
Aloha, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all. That was great.